in place of a foreword. Today is the first class for practice method and the way of practice of Buddhism. All the monks and Buddhist followers should join hands and repeat the Buddha's name. Namo, the original teacher Sakyamuni Buddha, 3 times. These are the lessons of morality which are based in the causality law and focus on human development to help people become true human beings. They have been practiced and cultivated by people who have sufficient causing conditions since Buddhism came into existence on this planet. The founder of Buddhism, as honorably called by the following generations, is the Sakyamuni Buddha. He practiced and accomplished the practice on his own. He attained the full enlightenment, testified to the ability to master life, aging, sickness and death. It is the liberation from human life which is full of sufferings and continues in the endless circle of life and death. Buddhism has come into existence for 2,541 years. However, if we make efforts to study the canons and history of Buddhism in the original Sutta Pitaka, we will see that when the Buddha was still alive, the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis practiced with the right method of Buddhism. But since the death of Ananda, the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis practiced wrong method. Ananda was the last disciple of the Buddha to enter Nibbana. As such, there was no fully enlightened person to steadily steer the wheel of the Buddhist ship. Therefore the Brahmin patriarchs inconsiderately gathered and compiled canons in accordance with their own interpretation, opinions and imagination without the experience of full enlightenment in practice. As a result, the expanded canons have been compiled in the manner of secularization with folk superstition. As such, when the patriarchs had not attained full enlightenment and traveled to other countries to carry out missionary work, they were assimilated by other religions. Accordingly, the Mahayana expanded canons are the canons of imagination without origin. However, in the first 100 years when the Buddha was still alive, there were many bhikkhus who did not live in accordance with the standard conducts and virtues, did not abandon desire and evilness, so the Buddha had to create the pratimoksa for prohibition. But since the introduction of the pratimoksa, the bhikkhus committed more violations. This part of Sutta is due to the explanation of the patriarchs in Mahayana canons. However, when we studied the original canons, it was not like that. As in the commandment Sutta of the fruits of the ascetic life, the Buddha had taught sufficient precepts. There was no lack of any precept. Precept of prohibition, precept of virtues, precept of conducts, and precept of practice, in the volume 1 of the long discourses of the Buddha in Pali Nikaya. It was the precept of prohibition that had been created by the patriarchs but labeled with the name of the Buddha. In the precepts of prohibition of the patriarchs, we notice many huge mistakes such as, the Buddha is a fully enlightened person with complete wisdom. How could he create precepts and rules and then kept amending them again and again? Do you think it is right? In the Sutta of the fruits of the ascetic life, the Buddha only taught the fruits of the holy conducts of a Buddhist practitioner to the king Ajatasattu once. There was no change in this. Accordingly, we know that the precepts of prohibition were created and compiled by the patriarchs. When the Buddha entered Nibbana, his great disciples did not have the sufficient authority to manage such a large number of bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, 1250. As such, after the cremation of the Buddha, the great disciples of the Buddha, particularly Mahakassapa, saw some bhikkhus being glad when receiving the news of the Buddha's entering Nibbana. After the funeral, he quickly convened a council, carried out the first compilation of commandment suttas to establish a foundation of precepts for Buddhism in the future. Since the Buddha entered Nibbana, the commandment suttas have been compiled by the patriarchs, but the seeds of division and breach and violation of precepts started when the Buddha was alive. Therefore, few people strictly kept and lived in accordance with the standard virtues and conducts. When Ananda died, there was no one with leading authority. so gradually the Sangha was divided into many groups, 20 groups. Each group had their own explanation of the commandment suttas. Therefore, the expanded canons of Buddhism have considerably increased over time. It is these expanded canons that lead to the divergence of Buddhism, loss of origin. Buddhist monks, nuns no longer live in accordance with the standard virtues and conducts. They cannot abandon desire and evilness in their minds. Thus they cannot attain the fruit of practicing concentration, cannot enter concentration. The majority of them fall in wrong concentration. As such, nowadays, few people correctly practice the right mindfulness and correctly enter the right concentration. The 4 places of mindfulness and the 4 noble concentrations of dwelling in present bliss are merely empty theories. The scholars, preachers and practitioners who have not attained the accomplishment in their practice use their explanation, opinions and interpretation of imagination to lecture and expound the suttas of the 4 noble truths, the 4 places of mindfulness, the 4 noble concentrations, the 10 good deeds, the morality which is based in the causality law and regards humans as its center for development of Buddhism, etc. They cannot elaborate the suttas, only preach narrowly and repeat the explanation, opinions and interpretation of imagination of people in the past, then further add the explanation borrowed from other religions, even from modern science. Reading the sutta commentaries written by scholars and monks, we could see that the essence of the right Dhamma is ambiguous and confusing with preposterous combination of ascetic life and secular life. Ascetic life is incomplete and mixed with secular life and vice versa. They have made absurd combination of things and their writing is similar to patching up a piece of clothing with lots of holes. Due to their lack of understanding of the right practicing methods, they have created out of imagination the practice based on science, martial arts, Tai Chi, Qi Gong and yoga practice, etc. Such practice leads to excessive suppression of mind and body and has resulted in numerous sicknesses for the ignorant practitioners who put themselves in sufferings and risk their life without knowing it. There are too many expanded Buddhist canons, but one could not find even one canon to help with her practice properly and completely. In these canons, theories are empty words and practice is borrowed from heretical methods. People who wrote such canons which are being displayed for sale do not have result in their practice as they are following worldly sensual pleasures like others. Therefore it is obvious that they have not attained liberation. After 10 years dwelling alone in a hut, living strictly in accordance with the standard virtues and conducts and practicing the 4 places of mindfulness and the 4 noble concentrations, we have experienced the fruits of these methods, have been able to master our life and death and put an end to rebirth. Leaving the hut, we established Chan Nhu Monastery and determined to revive the Buddhist method and make it prevail. Over the last 17 years, many people have followed us to practice, however no one could keep the conducts of eating, sleeping and dwelling alone, let alone to practice the concentration of anusrava and abandon desire and evilness. Without being able to let go of desire and evilness, people cannot enter the 4 noble concentrations of dwelling in present bliss. Without being able to enter the 4 noble concentrations of dwelling in present bliss, one can never master one's life and death and put an end to rebirth. Only some people, who live in accordance with the standard conducts and virtues and abandon desire and evilness, remain in our monastery. Now they are making good progress in their practice of the 4 places of mindfulness in order to enter concentration, the 4 noble concentrations. They will illuminate Buddhism in the future if the living beings have sufficient causing conditions. Otherwise, if the causing conditions are not sufficient, i.e., living beings do not have enough good fortune, these practitioners will not have enough fortitude and perseverance to fight the last karmic forces of their life. In that case, the resurrection of Buddhism are extremely difficult and uncertain. Because the precepts are the gateway to the house of concentration and the precepts are too strict. As such, it is extremely difficult to live correctly in accordance with the precepts. The path of practice following Buddhism is very practical and specific for everyone. Everybody can liberate oneself from the worldly sufferings by a life of morality, to abandon desire and evilness. Only when one lives the life of letting go of desire and evilness, can his/her practice following Buddhism have proper result. Otherwise, the practice is useless. It not only brings no benefit to oneself and others but also makes oneself be indebted to the donors and supporters. As the life of morality requires letting go of desire and evilness, therefore few people can follow. Most people either give up their practice or only keep the form of practice or transform Buddhism into a different form, bodhisattva path, to easily live with worldly sensual pleasures. We have been contemplating again and again, should we develop the teaching plan regarding the way of Buddhist practice for the next generations? If the way of Buddhist practice is not disseminated in this world, particularly the moral foundation which is based in the causality law and focuses on human development to help people liberate themselves and live without creating sufferings to themselves and to others, where will the human beings go to? How many sufferings will they be subjected to? Due to ignorance, since time immemorial human beings have mistakenly considered the worldly things as real and that such things will make them happy when they have sufficient possessions. Because of this mistake, they keep holding everything and never let go. As a result, evilness keeps increasing and goodness keeps reducing. Human beings who have already been in great misery have more sufferings. We have compassion for human beings. They have followed Buddhism since a long time ago, are now following and will continue to follow Buddhism, one generation after another. However, they have not obtained liberation but instead sorrow, sadness, sickness, death, and more sufferings. People keep practicing but all that they get is mental consolation which is abstract, vague, and impractical. They cannot find the exit to get out of the labyrinth of heresy. The examples of our patriarchs who had to suffer terribly before they died make us feel wistful and worried so much about the destiny of ourselves and future disciples. Can Buddhism in particular and other religions in general resolve the sufferings of human beings, particularly the four sufferings of human life, i.e., life, aging, sickness, and death? Is the creation of religions only vain mental consolation of one generation to the next generations? And so we ask ourselves, what is the purpose of religions when they are created for human beings? They come to help human beings to establish a moral foundation which is based on causality law and regards humans as its center for development, to help human beings to live without creating sufferings to themselves, to others and to other living beings, or they come to lull human beings into the beautiful dream of heaven, utmost happiness, nibbana or realization of Zennism, realization of the path or beholding the Buddha nature to become Buddhas, the immortal, deities, etc. From the above thinking, we have to make a clear confirmation of religions. If the teaching of a religion can be verified by science, such teaching is the moral foundation of human beings which is based in the causality law and regards humans as its center for development. But if the teaching of a religion cannot be verified by science, such teaching is ambiguous, abstract, superstitious to lull human beings like a dose of tranquilizers. After our days of study of religions, we have chosen Buddhism because Buddhism is very close to science. After this choice, we have devoted all our life to make an experiment on the teachings of this religion. Thanks to such determination, we have removed lots of heretical methods mixing in the teachings of Buddhism. In the end, we have experienced and been able to verify the liberation of Buddhism in a very concrete and clear manner. When living in the state of liberation, we cannot ignore when we see human beings gradually moving down into the abyss of sufferings but still having the illusion that they could overcome sufferings with their brains and hands, with technique, science, modern technology, etc. They believe that when science and modern technology could produce abundant materials, human beings would have all happiness and peace, there would be no more suffering. They are wrong with such thought. If people do not have morality, no way can materials resolve their sorrows. The more the materials are, the more the sufferings of people are. Due to the craving for materials, people create more evilness and the world would be a hell. Without morality, because of materials, human beings will become ferocious animals or demons, etc. We know that we have not had such an authority like the Buddha, that we have not had sufficient ability and intellect for this huge task, but we cannot turn a blind eye to the sufferings of all people, to the survival of Buddhism, particularly the moral foundation which is based in the causality law and regards humans as its center for development. Millions of people are following this religion but do not practice with the right method. We therefore are not afraid to speak up about the truth to re-establish the right way of practice of Buddhism, to elucidate the teaching, method and the moral foundation of the Buddha, and to save so many people who are lost and practice wrong methods, practice to suppress the mind. If there are still true practitioners of Buddhism in this world, for the future of Buddhism, in the interest of all living beings, of human beings, etc., please together with us contribute to point out the errors so that we can timely correct the way of practice and the moral foundation of Buddhism, which is based in the causality law and regards humans as its center for development. We sincerely express our gratitude to you. With all respects, the Venerable Elder Thich Thong Lak. The 6th of October 1997.